So for week one, you're going to be building your blueprint. You're going to be preparing to actually build your business or start your successful business. So if you're already in business, you've probably completed a lot of these steps already, but I highly recommend you go back through and fill in any gaps. Maybe there aren't things that you considered when you first opened your business, and now is your time to actually go ahead and do those things. So for week one, it's your blueprint. You're going to be putting together the pieces and building the foundation for your business. And the first way to do this, and the first step that you should take to do this, is going to be your market research and analysis. Now I'm going to use a little bit of an analogy here, so please follow along. Now your market, or a market, is a place. Think of it as where your target audience and where your customers and clients go to purchase services and products like yours. So let's say I was creating a maternity apparel line. The mall that I would go to is going to be the apparel mall. And all of the stores inside of the mall are my competitors. And I'm going to walk around and I'm going to look and see, who's doing what, who's successful, what are their marketing techniques, why are they so successful in the industry? And I'm going to take those things back and see, is this something that I need to incorporate in my business? But you need to hold true to what your business is and your point of differentiation. What makes your business unique? Is it you? Is it your experience? Is it the type of product or service that you're providing? You want to stay true to that, but there might be things that you haven't even considered. So, if I was, again, trying to start this maternity apparel line, and I go to the mall, and I'm like, what? I never considered using this material, or I never considered, incorporating this into my product. Take that back with you, back to the drawing board, but then you're going to go ahead and analyze everything that you found. You're going to analyze who's doing what, why they're doing what they're doing, the health of the market. Are all of these businesses, are their stocks tanking? Are there newer businesses that are doing really well? Why are they doing well? So once you kind of get a lay of the land, you kind of figure out the layout of this mall and who all of the competitors are, you take that information back home with you and you analyze it. Now, your research might not be you walking through the mall. It might be a Google search. It might be a Yelp search. So you're going to utilize, these tools. Now, I also recommend that you go to YouTube and you type in whatever keywords apply to your business and see who's out there and what they're doing. Do the same thing for all the social media sites, for Google, for Yelp, for Nextdoor, for Angie's List. Go to whatever respective search engine that your customers might be using. Again, your customers and clients, your target audience, is going to go to this market. So think of it in that way. How are they, getting access to these products and services? How are they finding these products and services? That is your market, and that is what you're analyzing. Next is your financial plan. I want you to think of this as a working document, meaning whatever you write down right now in week one could possibly change, especially when you get into things like your business structure and your website. So put down what you think your expenses are right now and just keep that handy, because by the end of week 3, this will probably be updated a couple more times, but by the end of week 3, that's when you should have your final expense sheet or startup cost and, cost that, whatever you're going to have to pay to keep your business in business, whether that's, website fees that are paid monthly, domain fees that are paid annually, taxes, things like that, fees to the state and federal government. So put down what you think your expenses are. Incorporate what you learned in your market research and analysis. For example, going back to my previous example, maybe I was going to use cotton, but then I found this synthetic, material. It's a little bit more expensive. So I need to account for those costs. So you're going to put all of these things into your financial plan. And it's okay that you don't have all the answers right now. It's okay that you haven't thought of everything. That's why you're going to have, that 10 to 15% buffer to incorporate anything you might not have already incorporated. And I like to round up to the nearest 1,000. If your expenses are a lot lower than that, you might want to round up to the next 100. But generally, if my expenses are $5,000, 10% of that is $500, but I'm actually going to round my expenses up to $6,000 to have a bigger buffer, like more of a 20% buffer. So that's what I do, but the general rule of thumb is 10 to 15%. Next is going to be your product description. And I kind of just threw this in there because I want you to start thinking about how you're going to describe your product and services, because that's essentially you trying to describe your business. So you need to figure out, and this kind of goes back again to the maternity apparel line or apparel in general, Am I going to highlight the type of material I'm using? Am I going to say keywords and key phrases that appeal to my target audience? Like maternity, comfortability, stretch, things like this. What are the keywords? So for me, maternity line, I'm going to be targeting, women of a certain age, kind of like the age where most people have kids, maybe that's like 25 to 32. And then I'm going to be targeting things like, and you can target your audience based on your price as well. So if I want this to be $100 t-shirt or $100 shirt, that's not going to be the average consumer. It might be, but I'm obviously going to be targeting certain people that can afford to pay $100 on a maternity shirt. So all of these things go into your product description. And the reason why I threw it in here is because I want you to start thinking about how you're going to sell your company. And I mean that as, how are you going to convince people to buy your product or hire you or your services? And the only way really to do that is to work on your service description. And again, this is going to be like your financial plan where it's going to change, and it's totally okay that it changes, but you want to start thinking about it now. Because it's one thing to have a grand idea, I'm going to sell apparel, but it's another thing to actually put it on paper. So this is going to be you bringing your idea into fruition. Now, if you're already in business, go back and look at your product and service descriptions. If you were, your ideal customer and client, is your product description or service description enough to convince you to buy? Because again, they don't know you. They don't know your business. So you really have to make sure you get your point across in these descriptions. Next is business structures. And the two business structures I want to emphasize are going to be sole proprietors and LLCs. I'll touch on the others, but I'm really going to emphasize on those two. So a sole proprietor or self-employed is going to be your unincorporated business, meaning, you didn't actually file a business license. Maybe you have an EIN, which we talk about in the next lesson, but, maybe you're just operating under you. Now, I'm going to also make a recommendation here. Now, when you are a sole proprietor, you are going to pay self-employment tax. And I'm going to talk about this more in the business tax module or the mini course, which is separate from this, but you're going to be subject to self-employment taxes, and it is not good. It's about 15.3% on top of everything else that you have to pay. But as a sole proprietor, you are not going to be able to maximize your profits, and that is just the honest truth. This is when I recommend being a single member LLC. Single member LLCs are just like sole proprietors, except you remove the liability. So that is kind of the main purpose of an LLC. But also, under your LLC, you can hire yourself as an employee and save on those taxes. And I'll get more into this later, but just know that you can save more on taxes, and there's more of an advantage of having that LLC and that business license. And that is because most states charge you to operate in their state. For example, every year in California, I have to pay $800. But the give and take there is I get tons of perks in this state, to be a small business, to be an LLC. So that is really how people make the determination of whether they want to be a sole proprietor, self-employed, unincorporated, or an incorporated official LLC business. And I definitely recommend an LLC because of the fact that it does remove that liability, and it's usually the one that applies to most of us. Now, partnerships, corporations, and co-ops are going to be more of your bigger business, or if you're going into business with a friend or your spouse or whoever, your children, that's going to be your partnership. And it's similar to an LLC, where you can do an LLC C Corp, which basically means that you are going to split the profits and responsibilities according to the percentage of ownership. So if I own 10%, but my significant other owns 90%, they make 90% of the profits, they have 90% of the responsibility, and I make 10% of the profits, but only have 10% of the responsibility. So that is how partnerships are divided. I will mention that anyone can file a nonprofit. If your business is, the sole purpose of your business is to provide, is not to make money for yourself and become wealthy, but to contribute to society, to, the community, then you can fall under that nonprofit. But the government is very strict on who qualifies as a nonprofit. So you really need to make sure that your business plan aligns with the structure of a nonprofit, because there are a lot of perks of being a nonprofit, and that's because you're not making a lot. So if you have a multi-billion-dollar nonprofit, that doesn't mean that you're making millions of dollars. You'll have a set salary. So that's why if you're going to have a nonprofit, it is for the purpose of giving back. And that is the way it should be, and that's how they being the government, protects the integrity of what a nonprofit is. The last thing is your EIN, and I'll just briefly touch on this. Please use the link that I provided, or make sure that when you go to Google and you type in EIN IRS, that you're going to the actual irs.gov, because an EIN is free. But when you Google it, the first, 5 or 6 services are paid services. And that's not what you want. It takes 2 seconds to fill out on your own. It's very simple information. So make sure that you're utilizing the free IRS EIN and you're not paying another, company or third party to file the EIN for you.